Anthuriums. Anthuriums, a member of the Araceae family of plants, come in great variety of shapes and sizes. Their name may be unfamiliar to many, but this heart-shaped plant makes a lasting impression. Today, we will explore two different systems for growing anthuriums. The first system is an artisanal system, while the second is highly technical. But no matter the choice in production systems, anthuriums are very important plants because of their beauty and resilience.
In this cultivation system, we grow anthuriums, specifically of the Anthurium andreanum variety. One of this plant's characteristics is that it's a cut flower. It can be grown as a cut flower, or it can also be marketed as a live plant. A peculiar trait of this flower, or of this plant, is that it's a modified leaf that we call a flower. Here in this plantation, we can take a close look at this plant, and this that people call a flower is a modified leaf called a spathe, and this is the spadix. The spadix is the structure where the real flowers are located, but what people commonly call flower is this. What we sell is this stem with this modified leaf. In this plantation here, we also grow plants to sell to other cultivation operations.
What are the peculiarities of this plant, and what are its traits?
We are inside an anthurium plantation. The anthurium plant is a perennial herbaceous plant. Perennial means that it lives for a long time producing flowers.
Produciendo flor.
A characteristic of the anthurium plant, or of the Araceae family, is that the stalks are herbaceous. That means that there is no wood or bark present anywhere in the stem. This family also has shallow roots. Within the Araceae family, we find 700 species. Among those 700 species, we find Anthurium andreanum. There are approximately 100 varieties of cut flowers among Anthurium andreanum. What makes this cut flower different is how long it lasts in a flower vase. Vase duration is the measure of how long it takes the plant to die in a flower vase after being harvested. What this anthurium cultivation system does is to imitate the conditions in the plant's native forests, or to approximate those forest conditions. We don't plant directly on the soil. Instead, we use planting beds, where we put a substrate that imitates the forest floor. We also install a shade cloth in order to minimize the light reaching the crop.
Anthuriums can be found between 0 and 2,000 meters above sea level. At higher altitudes, anthuriums do not flower. Humidity can reach between 60 and 90%. Anthuriums can tolerate maximum temperatures of 35 degrees Celsius. At hotter temperatures, the flower will abort and production will be low. The minimum temperature is 10 degrees Celsius.
The wind is another factor that must be taken into consideration when you're creating the right environment for the anthurium. High-velocity winds can cause various types of damage to the plant, like causing the flowers to spill or the leaves to fall, which is why the shade cloth must also cover the sides of the crop.
Anthuriums. Anthuriums. Reproduction. Anthuriums can reproduce in two ways, sexually or asexually. Let's explore each way.
Anthurium propagation can happen in two ways, sexually and asexually. On this farm, we use both ways with the idea of creating new varieties and improve the crop. For sexual reproduction, we let the flower turn to seed, meaning here in the spadix we leave the flower in the plantation with the intention of letting the seeds form. In this corn-like structure or spadix, we can see how the seeds are forming. We take it out, crush it, and this is the seed that will sprout a new plant. We place this seed in a tray or in a germinating bed, which can be prepared with sand or also peat. In this case, we're using peaty soil or turf. We place the seed right on top. It should not be buried, and in approximately 3 months, it should germinate. After germination, what we get is this seedling. Here, you can clearly see what's left of the seed. The seedling now has 2-3 leaves, and it also has roots. This is sexual propagation. It takes the seed 3 months to mature on the plant, and after the seed is planted, until the plant germinates, it's another 3 months. The seedling is put inside a bag with the intention of being able to fertilize and water the plant easily. After this time, after germinating, it's transported to the field. There, it takes approximately another 3 months for the plant to reach a growth level where it has a greater quantity of leaves and roots. This plant that we've bagged could be anywhere between 6 months to a year old, and that would depend on its size, like this one, where we can see it has a broad and large root system that makes it possible to sustain itself out on the field. Its leaves are also much larger. That is what tells us it's time to transplant it now. It's from this plant that, in approximately a year or so, we will cultivate the actual flower that we distribute commercially.
Asexual reproduction is done using the plant's offshoots. Let's see how it's done.
When the plant has grown to adulthood and it has been producing in the plantation for 5 to 7 years, then we cut offshoots like this one, making sure that it has approximately 5 or 6 buds. Each bud can produce an individual plant. In this case, we show that the offshoot can be approximately 10 to 5 centimeters wide. From it grow the aerial part and the root system. This plant is identical to the one we had out in the field. The difference between sexual and asexual reproduction is that this way we'll get a plant that is identical physically and in terms of production. But with sexual reproduction, you will get a plant that is totally new and which will have different traits and characteristics.
This plantation uses asexual reproduction because it reduces the time needed to produce flowers. This means that either the flowers can be cut quickly or the plant will be ready to sell quickly. Planting.
Given the anthurium's growth patterns and their peculiar root systems, the plants don't need to be planted directly onto soil or into the ground. That is why we make these planting beds. Before installing the planting beds, which can be built out of wood, bamboo, or cement, we lay down a plastic sheet, on top of which we put either natural or inert substrates. In this plantation, which produces and sells both cut flowers and live plants, we use a natural substrate. The substrate we use in the planting beds has rice husks, compost, rotten leaves, and sawdust. We mix this and we air it out a great deal. Afterwards, we mix it well, disinfect it, and finally, we plant the seedlings. The cultivation density of Anthurium plants should be between 10 to 20 plants per square meter. That means that the plants should be spaced 20 to 30 centimeters apart in order to achieve this measure. You can plant either a single plant per hole, or you can plant 2 inside a hole. The dimension of the planting beds where the Anthurium plants will be planted should be 1 meter 20 centimeters wide. And it can be as long as you want it to be, always trying to fit the most plants possible in the area.
Anthurium plants require constant care. Let's see what type of attention they require.
When planting anthuriums, you have to plan ahead. You have weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly activities. Every week, we perform foliar fertilization. What that consists of is applying a fertilizer that's easy for the plant to assimilate so that it produces a great deal of leaves and flowers. We piggyback on this foliar fertilization activity, which is done with a portable pump, and we also apply a fungicide and an insecticide. The fungicide must be systemic or protective, and the insecticide is normally of the contact type, but it can be systemic. The intent is to prevent disease and improve flower quality. Every 2 weeks, we perform another activity, and that is, we fertilize the soil. This should also be done with a fertilizer that is easy for the plant to assimilate, and it's done with 2 to 5 grams per plant. The fertilizers we use are complete fertilizers, meaning that they have NPK and minor elements.
Anthuriums. Anthuriums.
Among the activities performed on a monthly basis around here is the trimming of old leaves and trimming of old flowers. We also remove weeds and the like. The sanitary trim is done in order to remove leaves that show signs of infection or that have some type of sanitary problem, meaning that they have some disease or symptom of disease. Same thing with flowers that are old or that show some sign of disease. Those are taken out of the plantation. They are cut with a tool that could be a knife or trimming shears. The trick is to disinfect the tool before making the cut.
Those leaves that don't have optimal quality, meaning that they have turned yellowish or look dead, or that don't have a good size, they are taken to the compost pile. The material obtained through the composting process will later be used in other crops.
Composting just means to accumulate them and let them decompose.
Harvest. What characteristics must the flower have to be harvested and sent out to the market?
When the spadix change color, and the part with the most intense color is the length of a phalange, then it's the right time to cut the flowers. That's how we're going to get them to last a long time in the vase, which means they can last approximately 15 days after being cut. Cutting the flower. It makes no difference if it's large or small. It must be done the same way, with shears and disinfectant to avoid transmitting diseases from one plant to another. You dip the shears in disinfectant and cut at the base of the plant to get a much longer stem.
During the cutting of the flower, you must provide continuous hydration so that it doesn't lose vigor. After harvesting, they must be taken to a place where they are gently washed. Afterwards, the flowers are packed in cardboard boxes and covered with blank newsprint to avoid staining the flowers. The newsprint that covers the flowers must be humid in order to keep the box temperature low and maintain freshness. Each box can hold between 10 and 15 dozen flowers. They need to be properly arranged in one under the other to avoid friction and scratches. The size of the boxes where the anthuriums are packed measure 1.2 meters long, 15 to 20 meters tall, and 50 centimeters deep. Marketing live plants.
In this plantation, we market both cut flowers and live plants. Others can then harvest cut anthuriums from the plants. So what we are doing is extracting the plant from the field with its whole root system and approximately 3 leaves and a flower button so the customer knows the color. This root is not needed for the new harvest, so it must be cut. After this, it must be disinfected. And they are wrapped in newsprint. So as to protect the root and the leaf. After it's wrapped, we moisten the newsprint so that it lasts longer in the box. It must be packed very well so as to not cause any harm to the leaves or their roots. This way, the plant can last up to 10 days in the box, and it can last a month before replanting. The only thing you need to ask when buying live plants is if the plantation is free of problems and sanitary problems. For that, we use our records with the ICA.
Now, we will see a more technical approach.
This cultivation system is similar to the previous one. The main difference is in infrastructure. We also plant Anthurium andreanum. The main difference is that this one only operates to grow cut flowers. The difference in infrastructure is that the amount of money invested is much higher, since the flower must remain inside longer, and they also need to produce weekly. This is a cultivation system that grows Anthurium andreanum as cut flowers. That implies that our plants are planted a certain way and are of a certain size so they can flower all year round. Normally, we harvest twice a week, and we sell to the market approximately 5,000 to 10,000 flowers.
Anthuriums. Anthuriums.
In this plantation, we grow the smooth red variety. The great advantage of this flower and this plant is the high level of demand in the market for both the flower and the leaf. So you generate a high level of production for each plant. Each plant produces approximately 1 flower per month or every month and a half.
What type of propagation is used in this plantation and why?
The plant used for this plantation comes from vegetative propagation, since this way we ensure uniformity of the plants in terms of growth and flower size.
In this plantation, we find a modern irrigation system using microaspersion, which is used during the dry season.
The cultivation density of this plantation is approximately 18 plants per square meter, and we plant them double, since we need to guarantee the greatest number of plants per square meter and the greatest quantity of flowers.
The agricultural tasks required in this anthurium production system include pruning, deflowering, weed control, path clearing, fertilization, and fumigation.
After the flower is harvested, and while keeping it hydrated, we bring it to the post-harvesting area. Here, we perform various tasks that include cleaning the flower, hydrating it again, bagging it, and then packing it in such a way that it can reach the customer easily and last a long time. First, we clean up the flower. This consists of cleaning it with a wet rag to remove any byproducts from the harvest and any dirt. It also makes its natural shine much more visible. The third task is bagging. This is done by hand and requires a bag with a hole in the front or the back where the spadix goes, and it protects the spathe, which is the modified leaf people call the flower. The fourth task is packaging. Here, we do it in cardboard boxes that we call tobacco. The boxes measure 1.2 meters in length, 15 centimeters tall, and 20 centimeters wide. The amount of flowers is 5 dozen large flowers per box, 10 dozen medium flowers per box, and 15 dozen small flowers per box. As part of the packaging process, besides boxing the flowers, they are covered in plastic. Besides that, we add chopped wet paper with the purpose of providing more moisture to the stems. We place the paper in the middle and in the top part, also to protect the flower from friction during transport.
Plagues and diseases. Because of their high density and humidity, Anthurium crops face strong threats, amongst them mites, aphids, and slugs. In order to avoid these problems, you have to continuously monitor and control the crop. Anthuriums are yet another alternative amongst the myriad flowers that can be cultivated, but they stand out for their longevity, beauty, and hard shape.